Well, YouTube, me man, Mr. B, and boy, sometime, when you pray for rain, you must be prepared to deal with the mud. Because from what I'm observing, Jamaica now finds itself in the throes of a serious labor shortage. And this has been coming for a long, long time. And it's interesting that while we're grappling with this thing, the various talking heads back home don't seem to be in agreement in the first instance that we do have a labor problem. And where there is agreement that there is clearly no idea as how to address this thing. In fact, only a couple days ago, the Prime Minister was down in Trinidad where he made some pronouncements talking at a Jamaica diaspora town hall meeting that was held in Trinidad, where he talked about, was predicting that the Jamaica's economy is changing and that the country is on track to achieving full employment. Well, that's a that's a let me coin a term, a conundrum in terms, because that is the kind of argument you apply when you try to fool yourself. Because our problem in Jamaica is that we have always been on the cusp of this labor shortage. It's just that it is something that takes a longer time for the manifestation of it to become obvious. And according to the Prime Minister, that once migration, and I'm trying to quote him here, he says, migration, specifically teacher migration, continues to be a topical issue in Jamaica as several educators exits the local classroom for better salaries and compensation overseas. Keep in mind that term, better salaries and compensation overseas, right? And the Prime Minister claimed that people, once the migration eases, then the labor shortage will stop. That is what I call a bullshit in terms, right? Because first of all, we need to address why we are where we are. And to do that, you really need to go back, and let me lay the foundation. First of all, for a country the size of Jamaica, our population is very, very small. In fact, the Jamaican population has been declining at a growing rate. So, in fact, the decline measured over the last 8 years is about 1.4 to 1.5% per annum. That is the level of decline in your population growth. And the genesis of this goes back to the 1970s when the country embarked on this population control program, and they basically authored this under the heading that 2 kids are better than too many. This was about 1975-76, and in 1975-76, the Jamaican population, our rate of population growth was somewhere in the ballpark of about 38 per 100,000 of population, right? And at that time, the population would have been somewhere in the ballpark of about 2.6 to 2.7 million. So if we look at where we were then in 1976 to now 40, almost 50 years later, our population currently sits at somewhere in the ballpark of about 2.8, 2.83 million, right? Jamaica, over that period of time, really should have been looking at a population of better than 4.5 to 5 million people, because if you don't have a growing population, what you run the risk of doing is that you start to we're a consumption-based economy, right? And part of what drives that consumption is the competition. If you don't have people to buy goods, then ultimately nothing now go sell and you start to dry up. Here is the problem that we're having. And people will argue, but some of the people in Jamaica have too much picnic. You can never have too many children. And what we now find ourselves in is a situation where this is exactly we swallowed those pills of the birth control program of the 1970s, and 40 odd years later, we are now paying the price, because when you combine the factor of the decline in the birth rates, migration is a major part of Jamaica's problem. In fact, Jamaica ranks as the second among the countries, migrating countries in the world. Jamaica ranks number two, and the majority of the people who leave Jamaica are people who are, the ones who are better able to contribute to the development of the economy. And invariably, when these people leave, they ain't going back. And so when you add to that this, decreasing replenishment of a population, you end up with this kind of situation. It has been 40 years in the making. So I don't want to, this is not a Oldness JLP or PNP problem. It's a Jamaica problem. And it basically says, and we can start out by saying that the PNP, who authored the family planning or birth control program of the 1970s, basically planted the seeds of this problem that we now have. And in the course of planting that seed, what we also did is that we started to stifle any development in the economy. And so people are looking around for opportunities. Every population wants to do better than the previous generation. And if you're in a country where you stifle the growth in wages, people are going to go, especially those who are able to leave the country, they're going to go where the money is. So that's the first problem. The people who are more enterprising, the ones who ought to have been able to be there to contribute to the economy's development, is migrating. The second aspect is you're not having enough children. The third problem is, because you now have, and we should see it because the tax rates and the tax rolls are strangulating. Government may be collecting more indirect taxes through GCT, etc., and then boasting that we're doing better with this thing. But the reality is that your workforce is dropping. We are now in a situation where a lot of companies, a good friend of mine who runs an insurance company and is trying to expand, him can't find people to put in the outlets where he would like to grow the business. And then, as a conversation we had even today, where him say, if you're not paying people so that they can stay in the jobs, right? Once you pay people a livable wage, people will turn out for work. In the BPO sector, which I say David Wan, who is the president of the Jamaican Employers Federation, talking about not increasing wages in this sector because it is going to affect the quality of the manager, because the managers are going to start to ask for more increase. The first thing you need to do to encourage people to go to work or to stay in Jamaica and work in Jamaica is you need to raise wages. Bank of Jamaica is hanging on to this old-fashioned theory that say if you increase wages, you increase inflation. That's a bag of bullshit. Because the bottom line is, if people now work or earn at a level, they can't buy the goods in the stores anyway. The base concept of inflation is too much money chasing too little goods. Jamaica don't have a goods shortage problem. Jamaica have a problem with people not earning enough money that they can buy the goddamn goods in the first place. And on top of that, because them not earn enough money, the jobs that are available not pay enough money for people, the people out there who can work. And so what I'm doing is, a lot of people Canada. Canada opened them door wide. And Jamaica people are afraid of ice and snow and cold. Them realize that boy, if me can buy the winter coat and the whatever thing, it better me take my chance in a Canada, in the cold, where me can earn a living, where me can, take care of myself and my family. And migration is eating a huge swath of our young people population. In fact, there was a survey published about 2 or 3 years ago that showed that some 89% of school leavers in Jamaica is telling you they would leave at the drop of a hat. I see where, again, the same David one and the people who are controlling this BPO sector is talking about not you can't raise wages in this sector because it's going to impact the business and the competition and all them kind of thing. Those are the fundamentals that drive an economy. If you pay people more money, right, what you're doing is increasing their motivation to want to come out to work. So we are strangulating wages. And then we wonder why people now come out. Who going to work for $2.98 US an hour? Who going to go to university, get a degree, and then you come out and you have to go work for what is it, $160 an hour, Jamaican, right? Or maybe it's a little bit more than that, maybe at $180, right, per hour. Who going to work for that kind of money? That's absolute madness. So bottom line is, we are creating our own problems. And then in some of these companies, Bank of Jamaica governor and all the man tell you, boy, you can't pay wages at the lower level because it'll create inflationary problems and so on, and companies can't pay. My assessment is that Jamaican companies should be able to pay at a minimum $5 US an hour, right? $5 US an hour works out to an average of about 31,000 Jamaican dollars a week. And if multiply that by 4, you talk about $125,000 a month. Now, that is the kind of wage that a majority of people may be able to do reasonably or fairly well on. And then at the middle management and upper management level, you think the problem in Jamaica is that you have some people down in Jamaica who are working at some of them companies earn $30 and $40 million a year. And for them salary alone could have paid the entire staff in the organization, because the combined 20 or 30 other people don't earn $40 million a year when you add them up together. Therein lies the rub. So you pay the people at a higher level this massive amount of money, but the workers who are doing the actual work, you not pay them none, right? And at the drop of a hat, you call them and run them. So the people them look around and say, boy, watch out. Me have a college degree, me go on a foreign. Or me go where they work there. I mean, I come back. And what is even worse, a lot of these youngsters, my kids' age and little younger, them now have no picnic because them I say, boy, I can't even barely feed myself from the pay where me I get. So why me I go bring picnic coming at the world for thing? The reverse of that argument too is that when you look at even within the school system, granted, teachers are runway, tourism workers now, them can get job on cruise ship, or them can come America and pick up some jobs that pay them some $15 US an hour. Them gone, right? So a lot of these sectors, you go in a restaurant in Jamaica, you can barely get served because there's not nobody in there if you do no wait servicing and all them sort of thing. Because the youth them gone, and then on the other side, you have that one them and say, boy, I scamming and thing, because we can make 2 phone calls and raise some big money and thing. So there are all of these competing factors, and the only way you're gonna begin to solve that is to take a significantly global approach to dealing with the problem. The first problem is you need to pay the workers who are there more money. We need to increase wages. This argument about inflation is a bullshit argument, because at the end of the day, what you are doing is digging a deeper hole for the economy. You cannot grow an economy if you don't have population growth, right? And so Jamaica have an even more severe problem, because in the short term you're gonna have to import workers. What are you gonna pay those workers when you bring them in? Because you can't pay them $2.90 an hour. But then I left India and other countries or the rest of the Caribbean for come to Jamaica for work for $10,000 a week. Nobody now gonna do that. So make up on the mind what you want, right? Everybody is trying to, we want to run a capitalist society. But capitalism also work within the pocket of the workers too. They work so that they can buy the goods and services that they need to make themselves comfortable. And when you're in a country that is unable to provide that, people are going to leave. It doesn't help either that the fact that Jamaica as a social sector, a place where people want to live and work, that the place is not safe, that they have all of these crime and thing problems. So there's a whole heap of work that needs to be done. I don't envy the Prime Minister, except that, the argument I'm going to Trinidad going to make a foolishness. I don't envy them nonetheless, because this is a massive problem and it has to be fixed, because if we're not, in the next 5 years, we're going to crawl upon our belly. We have an aging population. More than some 28%, I understand, of the population is now over 55. So what that means is that more than a quarter of your population is aging and is going to drop out of the workforce. At the lower end, where the youngsters who are supposed to be coming out of the school system and coming into the workforce, those numbers are declining as well. And what is worse, they're not being replenished because your birth rates are dropping. Jamaica, we have a problem, right? Tell me what you think, folks, about what me have to say. Do you agree with my findings, my observations? What are the suggestions that you would make? And I'm gonna ask, if you like the video, hit the like button, and if you have not done so yet, subscribe to the channel so we can continue to have this kind of discussion. And more importantly, I would love to get you guys feedback as to what your own thoughts are as far as this is concerned. So give me a feedback. I mean, tell me what you think. Do you believe that we do have a problem, a labor problem in Jamaica? How severe it is the shortage from your own perspective? And, how do we go about hitting this, nipping it in the bud, or providing some solutions to this problem? Let me hear what you think in the comments section, and I look forward to hearing from you. Again, I'm me, Simon, Mr. B. Look forward. Respect.